What if I told you that on the second day of the second week of testing in Bahrain, the FIA had to come out publicly to explain why Lewis Hamilton's new rear wing is legal, when half the paddock was already talking about a covert revolution? The key is the new active rear spoiler. We are not talking about a conventional DRS that simply reduces the upper flap angle a few degrees to reduce drag. What Ferrari presented on the track is a system that rotates the mobile element to an almost inverted position in straight mode, approaching 180 degrees with respect to its maximum load position. And here is the critical point. The current regulation limits the transition time between modes and requires it to be a single continuous element, but does not establish an explicit cap on the final angle in low resistance mode. Ferrari did not break the rule. He took it to the logical extreme. During that second day at the Bahrain Grand Prix, although it was not yet a race weekend but a test weekend, the engineers began to cross-reference GPS data. In the maximum speed sectors, the Ferrari gained meters that cannot be explained solely by hybrid power or aggressive engine map. The reduction in resistance was too obvious. And the most impressive thing is that it did not compromise stability under braking, something that normally happens when you unload the rear axle excessively. This means that the system does not work in isolation. It is integrated with the diffuser architecture and with the underflow, allowing the car to progressively regain load when the wing returns to its original position. This is where the FIA comes into the picture. Given the growing murmur in the paddock, the Federation decided to publish technical clarifications confirming that the system complies with the letter of the regulations. This movement is not common in the middle of the preseason. When the FIA explains something without there being a formal protest, it is because the pressure is already in the air. And the explanation was clear. The mechanism respects the action times, maintains the structural continuity of the element, and does not violate any defined geometric limitation. The gap is that no one had specified exactly how much the flap could rotate in straight mode. The real impact of this is not just top speed. It is energy efficiency. By reducing drag so aggressively, the car needs less ERS deployment to reach the same top speed. That means you can save battery for later phases of the circuit or defend better in attacking situations. In a Formula One where hybrid management is decisive, this advantage can translate into constant tenths per lap, not a single miracle lap. The most revealing thing about the second day was that Ferrari did not look for a starter with absolute times. He did not try to set the best record. He focused on consistent runs. That indicates internal confidence, because when a team hides performance, it is usually out of caution. When you try something disruptive in real simulated racing conditions, it's because you believe the foundation is solid. And Hamilton, with his experience managing complex systems and sensitivity on the straight, was the ideal driver to validate that limit behavior. This act sets the context. Ferrari found a regulatory loophole, exploited it at the exact moment, and forced the FIA to take a position before the season began. The question that is beginning to arise now is not whether it is legal, because we already know that it is. The real unknown is how long it will take for rivals to react and whether they will have real room to do so before this innovation begins to define results. Once the FIA confirmed that Ferrari's rear wing was legal, the debate stopped being legal and became strategic. Because what really started to worry the teams on that second day of the second week in Bahrain was not whether they could protest, but whether they could copy it in time. The problem is that this is not a piece that you screw on, and that's it. It is not a simple redesign of the flap. It's a complete back philosophy. The system that Ferrari showed with Lewis Hamilton's SF-26 involves redesigning structural loads, anchor points, behavior of the beam wing, interaction with the diffuser, and above all, balance management when the wing radically changes angle in the middle of the straight line at more than 330 km per hour in Sakhir. On the second day of the 2025 Formula One preseason, something even more revealing began to be noticed. Ferrari was not only winning in the final part of the straight, he won from the middle of the straight. This indicates that drag reduction is earlier and more efficient than that of a conventional DRS. And here's the real kicker. When you reduce resistance sooner, you reach maximum speed sooner. And when you reach top speed sooner, you can lift slightly earlier, saving energy and stabilizing the car before braking. That detail completely changes the dynamics of overtaking and defense. Because in Formula One, not only the maximum point matters, it matters how you get there. If the Ferrari accelerates cleaner, needs less electrical deployment, and arrives with more battery to the next sector, then the domino effect is brutal. More available energy means more extra power in attack. More power means more strategic margin. And more strategic margin implies career control. In parallel, the teams began to analyze the dark side of this solution. When the wing rotates almost 180 degrees, the car's center of pressure shifts violently forward. That can lead to instability if the transition is not perfectly synchronized with the bottom load. Ferrari appears to have resolved that transition with very fine integration between the wing and diffuser flow. But that requires months of wind tunnel and CFD development. You can't improvise in 2 weeks. And that's where the advantage can become structural. If other teams try to replicate it quickly, they risk compromising reliability or balance. If they don't replicate it, they may fall behind in pure straight-line efficiency. It is a technical and political dilemma, because asking for regulatory clarification now would be admitting that you have been beaten in interpretation. But allowing it to run without limits may force you to redesign half the rear of the car in the middle of the season. In addition, there's a psychological factor that cannot be ignored. The fact that Hamilton is behind the wheel amplifies everything. He is not a rookie trying something experimental. It is a 7-time champion with extreme sensitivity to detect loss of stability at high speed. If he validated the behavior on the straight and braking on the second day in Bahrain, the internal message at Ferrari is clear. The concept works. And here the real tension begins. Because the FIA has already spoken, confirmed legality. But that does not mean that it cannot issue a clarifying technical directive before the first Grand Prix. If the teams push hard enough, the angular limit could be redefined or an additional restriction introduced. And that would open another conflict. Would it be applied immediately or after a transition period? What we saw on that second day was not simply an aerodynamic improvement. It was the beginning of a technical Cold War. One where the weapon is not visible to the naked eye, but alters the physics of the car in the most critical area of the circuit, the straight. And the big question that is beginning to take shape is this. If Ferrari has already shown its card in testing, how much more margin does it have in store for the real start of the championship? And now we come to the inevitable consequence of everything that happened on the second day of the second week in Bahrain. The impact is not going to be measured in statements, it is going to be measured on the track, because when the FIA publicly confirms that the system is legal, what it is really saying is this: if you want to beat us, you have to do it on the track, not in the offices. And that completely changes the scenario before the official start of the season. What Ferrari achieved on that second day of testing was not just demonstrating speed. It was to demonstrate structural efficiency. If the SF-26 can reduce drag so aggressively without compromising braking stability, then on circuits with long straights the benefit could be devastating. We are not talking about a specific tenth. We are talking about an advantage that can be repeated lap after lap, stint after stint. But this is where the risk factor comes in. A system that rotates almost 180 degrees under extreme aerodynamic loads is subjected to brutal stresses. Vibrations, bending, structural fatigue. In testing, everything may seem solid. But in the race, with traffic, dirty turbulence, and thermal variations, the demands are another story. And Ferrari knows it. That's why on that second day, they didn't force the show. They validated behavior. They validated transition. They validated stability. The question is whether they have already taken it to the limit or if they still have room. Because if this concept works fully from the first race, it will force the rest to react quickly. And reacting quickly in Formula 1 usually means making mistakes. Hasty rear architecture changes can break correlations, alter global balance, and generate reliability problems. And that's where a technical advantage can become a psychological advantage. The FIA has already spoken. Ferrari has already shown its weapon. Now we just have to see if the rest are prepared for the technical war that has just begun. What we saw on the second day of the second week of testing in Bahrain was not just another innovation within the usual development cycle. It was a brutal reminder of what Formula 1 really is, a championship where not only whoever has the most power or the best driver wins, but also whoever best interprets each comma of the regulations. Ferrari did not break any rules. He did not force an illegal structural limit. He did not present a dubious piece. He simply found a gap in the definition of the final angle of the rear wing in straight mode and took it to the logical extreme. The FIA confirmed it. It's legal. And that word changes everything. Because when something is legal, it stops being controversial and becomes a reference. From now on, the rest of the teams have two paths: redesign their rear concept to get closer to that brutal efficiency on the straight, or try to put political pressure to introduce a clarification that limits the angular travel of the system. But any move will come after Ferrari has marked territory. And here's the key point. This isn't just top speed. It is energy efficiency, it is braking stability, It is hybrid management. It is consistency over long stints. It is a tool that can transform the way positions are defended and attacked in the race. And if it works under real pressure, it can define entire weekends. A mechanism that rotates almost 180 degrees under extreme aerodynamic loads lives at the mechanical limit. Vibrations, fatigue, minimum tolerances. The real test was not the test. The real test will be when there is traffic, extreme heat, and wheel-to-wheel fighting. There we will know if this weapon is sustainable or if it is a high-risk bet. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.